their rookie quarterback, Anthony Richardson. Well, to dive deeper into these injuries, let's bring on Dr. Scott Adams.
Injury Report is sponsored by the Centers for Advanced Orthopedics, Orthopedic Associates of Central Maryland Division.
Injury Report.
Doc, we don't have much time for as much injuries as the Ravens have, but let's start with Marcus Williams. We asked you this last week about the pectoral injury. Now he's opting to not have surgery. The Ravens haven't placed him on IR, so theoretically you would expect him to be back in the next 3 or 4 weeks. What does him opting to not have surgery tell you?
Yeah, I think that tells you it wasn't a tendon tear, because if you have a complete tear of the tendon off of the bone, there's really little scenario where that's going to heal with conservative treatment, because it usually pulls off and then it kind of moves away from the bone. So even hoping that it would heal is not likely. And so it tells you that either one, it doesn't involve the tendon and that it's more of a muscle problem, and then you're dealing with a similar narrative to like a quad strain or a hamstring strain just up in the upper extremity, or it is the tendon but it's a partial tear. And then those partial tears, depending on the severity of the tear, can range from a few weeks, or if it's a very high-grade tear that you're hoping is going to heal, then that could still be the 3-month timeline. So it will be interesting to see over the next few weeks. If it looks like he's starting to take reps in practice and doing various things, then it makes you think it was either the muscle or a very low-grade tendon problem. The longer he stays out, the longer it seems like that it was a high-grade partial tear, and then there reaches a point where if it looks like it's almost a complete tear, I think then they would have treated it like a full tear and he'd be out for the season. So I think the next few weeks will be the true test.
Doc, with Odell's, we saw it on the slant route because he gets up and he kind of looks at his ankle, but he didn't leave, but then at halftime, I'm guessing it probably swelled up at halftime and got tight, and then they just sat him down because things were going smoothly. I'm guessing that if it was a big game today, he probably could have played, but it kind of reminds me of Mark Andrews with the Houston game. Let's give him another week. That, to me, is kind of what it looks like with OBJ.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there are two factors you consider specifically with him. One is, do we really need him this game? But I also think you have to think of it from the player standpoint. I missed the entire season last year because of a very significant injury, and I have to think that makes you a little more nervous about saying I'm good to go. So I think you do look at the schedule and you say, all right, how badly do they need me? And maybe in another higher important game, you might say, let's take the chance. But I think as an athlete, it makes perfect sense to sort of be a little nervous about saying, am I going to come back too soon after what I went through last year?
Doc, there's been some reports that Justice Hill, the toe injury, is turf toe. Mm-hmm. And when you hear that, it kind of cringe a bit because you know how severe it is. For a running back, especially a guy as explosive as Justice Hill, that could be a season-long thing, right?
It is. I think I sort of feel bad for the athletes that have this because I think most people watching or reading say it's just the toe. How can that be such a devastating injury? But just like you said, especially for someone like a running back where you're pushing off and you're using that toe to push off, that is going to be absolutely painful. And so when you do hear of a running back who has a toe or a foot injury, the first thing that comes to mind is turf toe because that's the classic mechanism of injury, is that someone falls on the running back's heel and it pushes the toe into a hyperextension position, and then that stretches all the structures on the bottom surface of the toe, and then for anywhere from a few weeks to 3 months, you have pain every time you push off, and in a position like running back, that's going to significantly hamper your ability.
Now, Doc, everybody saw the Nick Chubb one, and then like the news came out that it's just an MCL. How shocked were you when you heard what you heard?
Yeah, very surprising. I mean, you look at that injury and you think much more severe, and then the reports that he was taken to a local hospital, that made me think that they thought he had a knee dislocation, because when you have a dislocation, you start to worry about the blood supply and whether you injured the vessels in the back of the knee. So I was, from that alone, you think multi-ligamentous knee injury. Watching the play, you think that it's got to be more than one ligament. And they talk about how he is scheduled for surgery and that the ACL or they said might be a little loose. I mean, that'll be the key, because when I think of an ACL injury, I tell my patients I don't think it's a partial tear or a complete tear or a minor tear. It's either stable or unstable. And if the knee is stable, then it doesn't matter what you call the ACL. But if the knee is loose, then unfortunately that is an unstable knee, and then something more will have to be done. So I imagine it's a guarded optimism where they're going to go in, and once he is under surgery and they can really examine the knee to really test how stable it is. But by all accounts, I think everyone would have gotten it wrong to guess only the MCL.
He's Dr. Scott Adams. Doc, thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
you got
Doc.
it.